The details of the federal government's carbon pricing plans are tipped to be just weeks away. But it's still facing criticism from some in business who say an emissions trading scheme makes far more sense than a carbon tax. A new survey has also found that while most businesses are prepared for a low-carbon economy, they're deeply unsettled by the uncertainty around exactly how we're going to get there. This report from Alicia Barry.
The wheels may be turning on the government's carbon tax, but with no price to go on, business is feeling a little left behind.
The government hasn't given any indication either, so it's very difficult.
Lindsay Packer is the managing director of Packer Leather, which produces kangaroo hide. As he uses a lot of electricity, he's still assessing what a carbon tax will mean. But with 80% of his products exported to Asia, he fears it will reduce the company's competitiveness.
Our customers, they're not interested in paying for a carbon tax one little bit.
Packer Leather isn't alone in bracing for a low-carbon economy. A survey by The Economist's Intelligence Unit shows 70% of Australian businesses have carbon reduction strategies in place. The report, commissioned by finance and energy company GE, spoke to 130 business executives nationally. And despite the positive sentiment, the head of GE Australia New Zealand, Steve Sargent, says it would be wrong to think Australia's leading the way.
Compared to almost any other country in the world, there's only 5 countries who have higher emissions than us per capita, and that's Bolivia, Bahrain, Brunei, Kuwait and Qatar. If we don't start taking action in a gradual, well-thought-out, well-planned way and commence this journey to a low-carbon future, we're going to have things imposed upon us.
Something Qantas knows all too well after the European Union announced it will hit the airline with a surcharge on its European flights from January because Australia doesn't have a price on greenhouse gas emissions. Another finding from the survey was that 64% of respondents believe an unclear regulatory environment was holding them back from making adjustments. The survey was conducted before the government released its plans for a carbon tax in February this year. Since then, the proposals have come under heavy scrutiny, most notably by the energy sector, which is trumpeting claims that a carbon tax will cost consumers more than an emissions trading scheme.
The tax is just a fixed price. You can't go and find lower cost outcomes. Now that's important because the consumer always should be paying the least cost necessary.
The Energy Supply Association represents companies such as AGL, Origin and Arrow Energy. Its CEO, Brad Page, is worried about the transition from a carbon price to an emissions trading scheme.
A fixed price period on carbon might be necessary for political purposes, but it doesn't drive new investment. So if we've got a period of, say, 3 to 5 years and then an uncertain decision as to whether we definitely will go to a trading scheme or not, it doesn't provide the confidence the business is looking for.
The concern is if we're in an environment whereby we've got a tax and the government decides to either increase that tax or change that number in some sort of way that's not very predictable. And governments don't provide us with the sorts of certainty that a market can.
Business consultants say the government needs to support local companies in the transition.
Ideally, of course, we'd like to see a global scheme, but until that time, the risk is that businesses will move to countries which don't have as stringent a carbon price. And clearly we need to make sure that we put in place a system that protects Australian businesses in that environment.
Something Lindsay Packer would no doubt welcome.